Emma Hale had always believed that keeping busy would protect her from feeling lonely. She lived in a small Montana town where the mountains were tall, the fields were endless, and the wind carried the scent of pine trees through the open windows of her little home. People in town knew her as the local veterinarian, the woman who always arrived early, stayed late, and cared for every animal, as if it belonged to her. From the outside, she looked strong, focused, and perfectly content. But inside, Emma often felt a quiet emptiness she could never quite name. Her days were filled with routines she knew by heart. She woke before sunrise, pulled on her boots, tied her hair back, and drove to her clinic in a dusty white truck that always needed a little encouragement to start. Some mornings she talked to the animals as if they understood her better than people did. And maybe, in a way, they did. They didn't ask complicated questions. They didn't judge her for being shy or for avoiding conversations that lasted too long. They simply needed help, and Emma gave it freely. Yet when she returned home in the evenings, everything changed. Her house felt too quiet, too still, as if the walls themselves were waiting for her to speak. She cooked simple meals, ate alone, washed the dishes, and listened to the soft whirring of the ceiling fan as she settled onto her couch. She sometimes turned on the television just to fill the silence, though she rarely watched anything all the way through. Her days were full, her life was not. She didn't talk much about her loneliness. She didn't know how. Her parents lived several states away. Her friends were scattered, and the people in town were kind, but distant. She had always been the type of person who listened more than she spoke, who nodded rather than argued, who stayed in the background while others talked. She wasn't unhappy exactly, but she wasn't fulfilled either. It was as if she were walking through life without truly feeling connected to it. Across town, Wyatt Carson lived a very different kind of quiet life. He was a cowboy in the truest sense. Steadfast, calm, and deeply rooted in the land his family had tended for generations. His ranch covered wide stretches of green fields and golden hay, with a barn that stood like a loyal friend beside his small farmhouse. People admired him for his work ethic and gentle spirit, even though he kept mostly to himself. He had always found peace among horses, cattle, and open skies. While Emma spent her evenings alone in her house, Wyatt spent his tending to the ranch. He checked fence lines, carried heavy bales of hay, and brushed down his horses until their coats shined in the warm light of the setting sun. He didn't complain about the solitude, he was used to it. But sometimes, when he watched the stars appear one by one in the dark sky, he felt something missing too. A voice to talk to, a warm presence beside him. Someone who could understand the weight he carried on quiet nights. Though they lived in the same small town, Emma and Wyatt didn't know each other well. They had spoken a few times when Wyatt brought his horses to the clinic for routine checkups. He always removed his hat politely at the door, and Emma always greeted him with a gentle smile. Their conversations were short, but pleasant. "How's he been eating?" Emma would ask, running her hands carefully along the horse's neck. "Good," Wyatt would reply, shifting slightly as if unused to talking for long periods. He's calmer now. They shared these small exchanges. Always polite. Always warm. Yet never deep enough to reveal the loneliness both of them quietly carried. Something in the air between them was soft and unspoken, like a road waiting to be traveled but never taken. Emma sometimes thought about him afterward. She admired the quiet confidence in his voice, the way he treated his animals with patient care, the kindness in his eyes, but she never allowed the thoughts to go too far. She wasn't someone who rushed into things. She wasn't even sure she remembered how to let someone into her life. Wyatt, on the other hand, noticed things about Emma that he never said aloud. He noticed how she pushed her hair behind her ear when she was thinking, how her eyes brightened whenever she talked about an animal recovering, how she carried herself with a strength that came from working hard, not from trying to impress anyone. But Wyatt was a man who believed in timing, and the right moment had never arrived, at least not until now. One late afternoon, as a soft golden light spilled across the fields, Emma stood outside her clinic locking up for the night. She paused for a moment, breathing in the crisp mountain air, trying to shake off the quiet heaviness she carried. Just then, she heard the distant sound of hoofbeats approaching. When she looked up, She saw Wyatt guiding a gentle brown mare down the dusty road toward her clinic. He lifted his hand in a small wave. She smiled, glad for the unexpected company. "Evening, Wyatt. What brings you here this late?" "The mare's been limping a bit," he said softly. "Figured I'd stop by before it got worse." Emma unlocked the door again and welcomed them inside. As she examined the mare, Wyatt stood nearby, watching Emma's careful hands and the calm way she spoke to the horse. In that small, quiet space, something shifted, not dramatically, not suddenly, but enough for both of them to feel it. "Your clinic always feels peaceful," Wyatt said after a moment, almost surprised by his own words. Emma looked up, meeting his eyes. "Maybe because the animals don't judge. They just need care." He nodded slowly. "People need that too sometimes." Emma wasn't used to deep comments, especially from someone so reserved. But she didn't feel nervous. Instead, she felt seen in a way she hadn't expected. When Wyatt left that evening, leading his mare gently outside, Emma watched him go. Something warm lingered in her chest, not romantic yet, not dramatic, just warm. Something like the beginning of a path she hadn't walked before. Wyatt, as he headed back to his ranch, found himself thinking about Emma more than usual. Her soft voice, her steady hands, the quiet sadness he had sensed, even though she tried to hide it. He had always kept his distance from people, not out of fear but out of habit. But tonight, he couldn't help but wonder what her laughter might sound like, or what her evenings looked like when she wasn't working. Neither of them knew it yet, but that ordinary afternoon would become the quiet start of something important, something that would slowly unravel the loneliness both of them had accepted for far too long. For now, though, they walked back into their separate quiet lives, carrying with them only a subtle shift in their hearts. Emma returned home and made a simple meal, thinking of Wyatt's gentle way with the mare. Wyatt brushed down his horses and thought of Emma's soft smile. The stars appeared above both their homes, and though they didn't see it, their lives were already beginning to move toward each other, slowly, gently, and naturally, like two rivers finding the same path. What neither of them could imagine was how soon that path would open fully, or how deeply their stories would intertwine. But change was coming, carried on the quiet Montana wind. The storm arrived without warning. One moment, the sky above the valley was a calm gray blue, and the next, dark clouds rolled in like waves. The wind picked up suddenly, bending the tall grasses and making the trees sway as if trying to hold their ground. People in town hurried indoors, closing windows and bringing their pets inside. Emma Hale watched the sky from her clinic window, feeling a soft worry in her chest. Bad storms were not unusual in Montana, but each one carried its own level of unpredictability. Emma stayed at the clinic longer than she planned, making sure all the animals in the recovery rooms were safe. She checked the doors twice, then once again, just to be certain. When she finally stepped outside, the first drops of rain were already falling, big, heavy drops that soaked into her shirt and ran down the sides of her truck. She drove home carefully, listening to the steady drum of rain on the roof. She didn't know that this particular storm was about to change the quiet rhythm of her life. While Emma navigated the wet roads, Wyatt Carson faced his own challenges at the ranch. The wind had grown strong, sending dust swirling across the fields. Wyatt rushed to lead his horses into the barn, guiding them one by one with gentle words and steady hands. They trusted him completely, following him through the rain-splattered yard. After they were inside, he checked the gates, secured the barn doors, and made sure the younger animals had fresh water. It was tiring work, but Wyatt never complained. The ranch had always depended on him, and he had always answered that responsibility with quiet determination. Just when he thought everything was under control, he heard a noise beyond the fence line, not loud, but enough to catch his attention through the storm's roar. Wyatt paused, listening closely. There it was again, a soft, distressed whinny. He grabbed his coat and ran toward the sound, pushing through the rain that now fell in heavy sheets. When he reached the far fence, he saw a horse he didn't recognize, a stray, trembling from fear and cold. Its coat was muddy, its mane tangled from the strong winds, and when the lightning flashed briefly, Wyatt noticed a small cut on its leg. "Easy now," he murmured, stepping forward slowly. The horse stepped back at first, frightened by the storm and by the unfamiliar surroundings. But Wyatt's calm voice carried through the rain like something steady to hold on to. He moved with patience, lowering himself slightly to appear less threatening. The horse's breathing slowed, and within a minute, it allowed him to place a gentle hand on its neck. He didn't know where it had come from. Maybe it belonged to a nearby ranch. Or maybe it had been wandering alone long before the storm started. Either way, Wyatt couldn't leave it out there. He guided the injured horse toward his barn, speaking encouragement with every step. Despite the storm, despite the cold, he stayed steady. That was who Wyatt was, someone who never looked away when something needed care. Once the horse was inside and the doors were shut again, Wyatt inspected the wound. It wasn't life-threatening, but it needed proper attention. Only one person in town had the skill to treat it the way it deserved: Emma Hale. The storm raged on as he saddled his truck and prepared to leave. The roads were slick, and the rain made it difficult to see more than a few feet ahead. But the horse needed help, and Wyatt did not want to wait until morning. He covered the stray with a blanket and coaxed it into the trailer before driving slowly into the stormy night. Back at her house, Emma had just finished drying her hair and making a warm cup of tea when she heard the sound of an engine approaching. She peered out the window and felt a small jolt of surprise when she recognized Wyatt's truck coming to a stop outside her clinic. She quickly grabbed her coat and umbrella and hurried through the rain toward him. "Wyatt, what are you doing out here in this weather?" she called out as she approached. He stepped out of the truck, soaked from the rain despite his hat and coat. "Found a horse near my fence," he explained, his voice steady but urgent. "It's hurt. Thought you should take a look." Emma's eyes softened with concern. "Of course. Let's bring it in." Together, they guided the frightened horse into the clinic. Emma moved quickly, grabbing her medical kit and speaking in a soft, steady tone that seemed to calm the animal almost instantly. Wyatt watched her work, admiring how focused and gentle she was even in the middle of a storm. "Looks like it's been wandering for a while," Emma said as she cleaned the wound. "Nothing too serious. But it needs care. You did the right thing bringing it here." Wyatt nodded, relieved. "I didn't want to leave it alone out there." Emma could see the sincerity in his eyes, the same sincerity she had noticed every time he brought one of his animals to her clinic. The storm outside roared, but inside the room, there was a sense of quiet, an unexpected calm, created simply by their presence together. As Emma wrapped the horse's leg, Wyatt helped by holding the animal still. Their hands brushed once or twice, neither of them reacting outwardly, though something warm flickered quietly between them. It wasn't sudden or overwhelming, just a gentle awareness, like the soft glow of a lantern in a dark room. When the treatment was finished, Emma stepped back and sighed softly. "It'll be okay. It just needs rest and a clean environment. I can take it back to my ranch," Wyatt offered. "Plenty of space. And I'll check on it often." Emma nodded. "That's a good idea, but it would help if you brought it back every few days so I can keep an eye on the healing." "I can do that," Wyatt said without hesitation. For a moment, they simply looked at each other. The storm continued to rumble outside, but neither of them seemed in a hurry to leave. Wyatt admired how dedicated Emma was, how she didn't even think twice before helping an animal in need. Emma, in turn, admired Wyatt's quiet strength and the care he extended toward even a stray horse. "Thank you," she said gently. "Not everyone would go out in a storm like this." Wyatt looked down for a moment, then back at her. Didn't feel right to ignore it. Emma felt a soft smile tug at her lips. She respected people who acted from kindness, and Wyatt seemed to do so naturally. When the rain eased a little, Wyatt loaded the horse back into the trailer. Emma stood at the doorway watching him work, her hair catching the glow of the clinic lights. He glanced at her as he closed the trailer door, and for a brief moment, they simply held each other's gaze. Something quiet passed between them, something neither spoke aloud. "Drive safe, Wyatt," she said softly. "I will," he replied. "And, thank you again." As he drove away, Emma stayed outside for a few seconds longer, her heart feeling strangely lighter. Not because the storm had passed, but because the night had brought something unexpected, a connection, gentle and new. Neither of them realized how important those small moments would become. What started with a storm and a frightened horse was slowly turning into something that would reshape both of their lonely lives in ways they could not yet imagine. The storm had passed, but something in Emma's life had changed quietly, like a soft shift in the air that she didn't fully understand yet. Days went by, and Wyatt returned to her clinic again and again with the stray horse. Each visit felt natural, as if it were meant to happen. Emma noticed the difference these visits brought into her days. Her clinic felt a little warmer. Her evenings felt a little less lonely. And the quiet inside her chest didn't feel quite so heavy anymore. Wyatt always arrived early in the morning, when the sun was still stretching over the mountaintops. He would step out of his truck, remove his hat politely, and lead the horse toward the entrance. Emma, who usually started her day in silence, began to look forward to the sound of his footsteps approaching her clinic door. She found herself smiling more, though she didn't always realize it. Their conversations grew a little longer each time. Wyatt talked about life on the ranch, how the horses behaved in the early morning, how the fields changed colors with the seasons, how peaceful it felt to walk through the pastures before the day grew busy. Emma listened with interest, imagining the quiet beauty of his world. And Emma talked too, something she wasn't used to doing. She shared small things about her work, her childhood memories, and her love for animals. Wyatt always listened with genuine attention, nodding softly, as if each word she said mattered to him. The stray horse healed slowly. But it wasn't the horse that kept bringing them together. It was the growing comfort they found in each other's presence. A comfort that neither of them had felt in a long time. One evening, after a long day at the clinic, Emma sat at her kitchen table staring at a letter she had received earlier that week. It was from her sister, gently suggesting that Emma consider moving closer to family. Her sister wrote that living alone in such a quiet town might be too hard, and she wanted Emma to feel supported. The letter was filled with love, but reading it made Emma's heart feel unsettled. She held the paper between her fingers and read the lines again. Was she truly lonely enough to leave the town she had lived in for years? Was she strong enough to start over somewhere else? The questions weighed on her, creating a storm inside her heart that was far more confusing than the one that had passed through their valley. Emma didn't want to make a quick decision, but the idea lingered in her mind like a shadow that followed her everywhere she went. A few nights later, unable to stop overthinking, she decided to drive to Wyatt's ranch to return a set of medical supplies he had lent her. She told herself it was just a practical visit, but her hands trembled slightly as she drove down the quiet dirt road leading to his property. She wasn't sure why she felt nervous. Maybe it was because Wyatt had already become a small part of her thoughts, and she didn't know what that meant yet. The ranch looked peaceful when she arrived. Soft golden lamps glowed through the barn windows, and the gentle sound of horses moving quietly inside filled the air. Wyatt stepped out of the barn, wiping his hands on a cloth. When he saw Emma, surprise lit his eyes, followed by a warm smile that reached all the way to his expression. "Evening, Emma," he said gently. "Didn't expect to see you out here." She held up the supplies. "Just returning these." Wyatt walked toward her, his steps steady and unhurried. "You could have waited until tomorrow." Stormy roads left some mud patches. Emma hesitated before replying. "I couldn't sleep. I needed a drive." Wyatt noticed her tired eyes, the strain in her voice, the small tremor in her hands. He didn't ask right away, but something in his heart tightened with concern. "Want to come inside for a moment? It's warmer in the barn," he offered softly. Emma nodded, grateful for the invitation. Inside the barn, everything felt calm. The horses shifted gently in their stalls, and the air smelled of hay and quiet comfort. Wyatt handed her a warm mug of tea he had prepared earlier for himself. Emma wrapped her hands around it, letting the warmth settle into her fingers. After a few minutes of silence, Wyatt looked at her with gentle concern. "Something's on your mind." Emma stared at the steam rising from the mug. "I got a letter from my sister. She thinks I should move closer to family. She worries about me living alone here." Wyatt remained quiet, giving her space to continue. "I don't know what to do," she admitted softly. "I do get lonely sometimes. And leaving could help. But this town, my clinic, it's my whole life. I don't know if I'm ready to walk away from it." Wyatt leaned against the wooden beam beside her, folding his arms thoughtfully. "You've built something here. Something meaningful. You help this community more than you realize." Emma looked up at him. "Do you think I should stay?" He shook his head gently. "I think only you can answer that. But," his voice softened, "I hope you don't leave, because you think you're alone." Emma felt something shift in her chest, soft, like a feather landing. Wyatt continued in a quiet tone. "You're not as alone as you think." Emma's breath caught slightly at the warmth in his words. She didn't know what to say. This was more honesty than she had expected. But it felt comforting, not overwhelming. She gently set down her mug. "Wyatt, I didn't realize how much I needed someone to talk to until now." His eyes met hers, steady and sincere. "I'm here. Anytime you need someone to talk to." The barn felt small around them, not in a confined way, but in a gentle, safe way, like a place where quiet truths could be spoken without fear. Emma took a deep breath, trying to steady herself. "I've been lonely for a long time," she admitted quietly. "Sometimes it feels like I've forgotten how to be close to someone." Wyatt stepped closer. Not too close. Just enough to let her feel his presence. "You haven't forgotten," he said softly. "You just haven't had the right person beside you." Emma felt warmth spread through her chest, slow and steady. She looked down at her hands, unsure how to respond. She wasn't used to this kind of closeness. This kind of honesty. It felt both comforting and unfamiliar. Wyatt lowered his voice. "Emma, I've been lonely too." She looked up quickly, surprised. Wyatt always seemed so grounded, so strong. She never imagined he carried the same quiet ache she did. "I hide it well," he continued. "Ranch work keeps me busy, but the nights get long. Sometimes I wish I had someone to share them with." He paused. "And lately, I've been thinking about you more than I expected." Emma's heart fluttered, not dramatically, but softly, like a gentle breeze lifting a curtain. For a moment, they simply stood there, surrounded by the soft sounds of horses and the warm glow of lantern light. Neither of them needed to say more. The understanding between them spoke clearly, even without words. Emma finally whispered, "I didn't know." Wyatt smiled gently. "I wasn't sure if I should say anything. But seeing you tonight, I couldn't keep it to myself anymore." Emma felt her eyes sting, not with sadness, but with relief. She wasn't alone. Wyatt saw her. Truly saw her. And that realization changed something deep inside her. The letter from her sister still sat in her mind, but for the first time, it didn't feel like a decision she had to face alone. Because now, she had someone who understood her heart more than she expected. When Emma left the ranch that night, the air outside was cool and calm. The sky, cleared of storm clouds, sparkled with stars. She walked to her truck slowly, carrying a new lightness in her heart. Wyatt watched her go, his hands in his pockets, hope growing quietly inside him. The night had not been dramatic, but it had been important, a gentle turning point. A quiet shift that would guide their lives toward a new path neither of them had seen coming, but both of them needed. The days that followed Emma's late-night visit to Wyatt's ranch carried a quiet new warmth, something she couldn't quite explain but felt in every corner of her life. Her mornings felt brighter, her work felt lighter, and her thoughts, well, her thoughts wandered to Wyatt more often than she expected, not in a dramatic or overwhelming way, but in a soft, steady way, like a gentle melody playing in the background of her day. Wyatt, too, felt a shift inside him. He moved through his chores with a different kind of energy now, as if the world had gained new color. Every time he brushed down a horse or walked across the fields, he found himself thinking of Emma's soft smile, the tremble in her voice when she shared her worries, and the courage it took for her to open her heart, even a little. He admired that courage more than she knew. Their connection grew slowly, naturally. Wyatt started stopping by the clinic, not only to bring the stray horse for checkups, but also simply to help Emma with small tasks. At first, she insisted she didn't need assistance, but Wyatt had a gentle stubbornness that made it impossible to refuse help for long. He repaired a loose latch on one of the animal stalls, fixed a flickering light in the hallway, and even built a small wooden shelf for her tools. Emma didn't ask for any of it, but he always showed up with the same calm sincerity. "You work too hard," he said one morning when he found her reorganizing feed bags. Emma laughed softly. "And you don't?" "We both do," Wyatt admitted. "But some work is easier when it's shared." The words settled in her heart like a soft blanket. Shared. She couldn't remember the last time someone offered to share anything with her. Their evenings also began to blend in gentle ways. Emma found herself stopping by the ranch after work. More often, not because she had to, but because being there felt peaceful. Wyatt would be finishing his chores, and she would lend a hand, holding buckets, brushing a horse, or simply walking beside him as the sun dipped behind the mountains. Sometimes they talked. Sometimes they didn't. Silence wasn't uncomfortable with Wyatt. It felt like a space where her heart could breathe. One evening, Emma arrived at the ranch to find Wyatt preparing a small table outside near the barn. A lantern hung from a wooden beam, giving off a warm glow. The sky above them was a soft orange fading into pink, and the fields shimmered under the last light of the day. "Are you expecting company?" Emma asked lightly. Wyatt looked up with a shy smile. "If you'd like to stay for dinner." Emma blinked in surprise. "Dinner? It's nothing fancy," he said quickly. "Just stew. But I thought we could talk, or not talk, whichever feels right." Emma felt her heart warm. "I'd like that." They sat together at the small table, eating simple stew, while the evening turned cool and gentle around them. The horses moved softly in the background, and the lantern's glow lit Wyatt's face in a warm, peaceful way. Emma watched him for a moment, admiring the calm strength in his expression. He wasn't a man who spoke loudly or filled the air with unnecessary words. Instead, he filled the space with sincerity, patience, and presence. "I've been thinking a lot," Emma said softly, as she set down her spoon. "About that letter from my sister, and about staying here." Wyatt looked at her with steady interest but didn't push her to continue. "I thought leaving might solve everything," Emma said. "But the more time I spend here, the more I realize, maybe I wasn't looking for a new place. Maybe I was looking for a new connection." Wyatt's eyes warmed. "And have you found one?" Emma hesitated, her heart fluttering gently. "I think I have." The soft breeze carried her words, and for a moment, the world seemed to pause around them. Wyatt didn't need to ask whom she meant. He felt the answer in her voice, in the way her eyes softened when she looked at him. "I'm glad," he said quietly, "because I've felt something changing too." Emma lowered her gaze to her hands, feeling shy, but Wyatt reached across the table and gently touched her fingers. Not in a bold way, not in a way that startled her, but in a comforting, sincere gesture that spoke without words. "You don't have to decide anything right now," he said. "Just know that you're not alone anymore." Emma felt her throat tighten with emotion. No one had said words like that to her in years, simple, honest words that held so much meaning. She squeezed his hand lightly, grateful for the steadiness he offered. From that evening on, they moved through their days with a quiet closeness. Emma discovered she enjoyed helping at the ranch after her clinic hours. She loved watching Wyatt work, his hands steady, his movements calm. She loved the natural way he spoke to his horses, as if they were his oldest friends. And she loved the way he made space for her, not forcing anything, not rushing her, just allowing her to exist beside him without fear or pressure. Wyatt learned to recognize Emma's moods, the way her eyes sharpened when she was worried, the way her shoulders relaxed when she felt safe, and the way her smile grew when she saw progress in a recovering animal. He admired her dedication, her gentle patience, and the depth of her heart. Their connection wasn't loud or dramatic. It didn't need to be. It was built through shared chores, shared meals, shared silences, and shared smiles. It was built through simple actions, Wyatt handing Emma a warm drink after a long day, Emma stitching a blanket for one of his younger horses, Wyatt surprising her with a jar of homemade jam, Emma bringing him lunch when he forgot to eat. One especially calm evening, Emma arrived at the ranch to find Wyatt sitting on the porch steps. The sky above them was dark blue, sprinkled with stars, and the air carried the soft scent of wildflowers. Wyatt motioned for her to sit beside him. "Tough day?" he asked gently. Emma exhaled slowly. "Busy. But better now." They sat in silence for a moment, listening to the night sounds of the land. Crickets chirped softly. A horse nickered from the barn. The breeze whispered through the grass. Wyatt looked at her with quiet understanding. "You look tired. You should take care of yourself too." "I'm trying," Emma said. "It's easier when someone encourages me." He smiled softly. "Then I'll keep encouraging you." Emma's heart warmed again. She loved how effortlessly Wyatt's words carried kindness, not forced, not dramatic, simply true. A gentle thought rose inside her, one she hadn't spoken aloud before. "Wyatt, do you really think I'm not alone?" He turned slightly toward her. "I know you're not. Because I'm here. And I care more than I've said." His honesty was steady, comforting, and warm enough to ease the lingering fears in her heart. Emma leaned back on her hands, looking up at the stars. "I think I'm starting to believe that." The moment didn't need anything more. It was perfect in its quietness, its simplicity, its truth. As the days continued, Emma's decision about leaving grew clearer. The idea of moving away no longer felt like a solution. It felt like leaving behind something gentle and important, something that made her world feel fuller. She didn't say the words out loud yet, but she knew, deep inside, that she was choosing to stay. Staying meant choosing her clinic, her town, her routine, and somehow, choosing Wyatt too. Wyatt felt the same. He didn't rush her to stay or leave. Didn't ask for answers she wasn't ready to give. He simply continued being there for her, showing her through quiet actions that she had a place beside him whenever she chose to take it. One day, as they walked together through the field, Emma brushed her hand against his lightly. Wyatt glanced at her, surprised but pleased, and without a word, he gently intertwined his fingers with hers. Emma didn't pull away. Instead, her fingers curled softly around his, and they continued walking in peaceful silence. It wasn't a grand declaration. It wasn't a dramatic confession. But it was a beginning, one built with trust, kindness, and the slow healing of two lonely hearts finally finding each other. The days had slowly turned into weeks, and Emma found herself waking each morning with a lighter heart. She didn't know exactly when the heavy loneliness she once carried had begun to fade, but she felt the change in every small moment. She felt it when she unlocked her clinic door each day, when she made her morning coffee, and especially when she saw Wyatt's truck pulling up the dirt road with the stray horse who had unknowingly woven their lives together. The horse had healed beautifully now, its once injured legs strong again. It had grown comfortable with Wyatt and Emma, following them with trusting eyes and a gentle nature. Emma believed that the horse had brought something special into their lives, something more meaningful than either of them could explain. Sometimes she laughed softly to herself, thinking that maybe the horse had chosen them, not the other way around. Evenings at the ranch became a peaceful routine. Emma often stayed after her workday, helping Wyatt finish small chores or simply sitting beside him as he looked across the fields. She discovered she loved watching the sunset from his porch. It painted the sky in shades of gold, pink, and soft lavender, and somehow, the world felt bigger yet calmer when she sat there with Wyatt. Wyatt, too, felt the changes inside him grow stronger. He moved with the same steady calmness he always had. But now he carried something new inside, a quiet hope. He never pushed Emma to make decisions about her future. He simply stood by her, offering support with gentle words and patient presence. He had always believed that feelings should grow naturally, not through pressure or force. One warm evening, after finishing a long day at the clinic, Emma arrived at the ranch feeling thoughtful. She had finally written a reply to her sister's letter, a reply she hadn't mailed yet. The envelope was in her bag, and all day she had felt its weight, like a reminder of the decision she needed to make. She found Wyatt near the barn, brushing the stray horse's coat as the sun dipped behind the hills. The soft orange light made the moment feel peaceful, like a scene from a memory she wanted to hold on to forever. "You're here earlier than usual," Wyatt said with a smile as he looked up. "I wanted to talk to you," Emma replied, trying to keep her voice steady. "There's something important I've been thinking about." Wyatt's hands stilled on the horse's mane. "I'm listening." Emma took a slow breath before speaking. "I wrote a letter back to my sister. She wants me to move closer to family. And for a while, I really thought about it. I thought it would fix the loneliness, the quiet nights, everything." She paused, searching for the right words. "But I realized something." Wyatt waited, calm and patient, his eyes steady on hers. Emma's voice softened. "I wasn't lonely because of this town. I wasn't lonely because of my work. I was lonely because I didn't have anyone to share my days with." "Not really." Wyatt's expression warmed gently, but he didn't interrupt her. She continued, her heart opening in a way that felt both fragile and brave. "These past few weeks, spending time with you, talking with you, just being near you, I feel different. I don't feel alone anymore." Her voice wavered slightly, but she held his gaze. "You've shown me that staying here doesn't mean staying lonely. Not when someone cares." Wyatt took a slow breath, feeling her words settle deeply inside him. He had hoped she felt this way, but hearing it spoken aloud brought a quiet emotion to his eyes. "So," Emma said softly, "I've decided to stay." For a moment, the world around them seemed to fall silent. The horse flicked its tail softly, the breeze moved through the grass, and the sky glowed behind them, but everything felt still in that moment, still and full of meaning. Wyatt stepped closer, his voice low and sincere. "Emma, I'm glad you're staying. More than I can say." She felt her eyes warm with emotion. "I don't want to leave this town, and I don't want to leave you." Wyatt placed a gentle hand on her arm, not rushing, not expecting anything more. "You don't have to. You've got a place here, with people who care. And," his voice softened even more, "I care, Emma, deeply." The honesty in his words wrapped around her heart like a soft blanket. She had waited years to feel understood, to feel valued not just for her work, but for who she was as a person. And now, here she stood, with someone who saw her fully. The evening air was cool as they walked together toward the pasture. The sky was turning a deep shade of twilight blue, dotted with the first stars of the night. They walked slowly, side by side, their hands brushing lightly every few steps. Emma finally spoke again, her voice barely above a whisper. "I didn't know I could feel this close to someone." "You can," Wyatt replied softly. "You just needed someone who cared enough to stay." Emma felt her heart flutter gently, a soft warmth spreading through her chest. She looked up at him, the trust in her eyes shining clearly. And then, in the quietest, most natural way, she whispered, "I can't resist caring about you anymore." She didn't say it dramatically. She didn't say it with uncertainty. She said it with a quiet truth that came from deep inside her, honest, gentle, and brave. Wyatt stopped walking, turning fully toward her. There was no surprise in his eyes, only affection, only understanding. He gently tucked a strand of hair behind her ear, his touch warm and careful. "You don't have to resist anything," he said. "Not with me." Emma felt tears form, not out of sadness but from the overwhelming sense of safety and connection. She took a small step closer, feeling his presence steady her heart. In that moment, everything felt right. Everything felt simple. Two people who had lived in quiet loneliness for so long were finally standing together, open and unafraid. The stars brightened overhead, the horses moved softly in the fields, and the night wrapped around them with gentle warmth. Emma leaned her head lightly against Wyatt's shoulder, and he lifted his hand to rest it gently on her back. It wasn't a dramatic embrace. It wasn't rushed. It was natural, peaceful, and full of quiet meaning. They stood like that for a long time, letting the silence carry the words they didn't need to speak aloud. From that night forward, their lives intertwined in ways both simple and profound. Emma no longer felt the ache of empty evenings. Wyatt no longer faced the long nights alone. They shared their meals, their stories, their hopes, and their quiet moments. Their connection grew not from big gestures, but from gentle actions, a shared laugh, a warm conversation, a steady presence. Both of them learned that love doesn't always arrive loudly. Sometimes it grows slowly, like sunlight rising over a quiet valley, filling every shadow with warmth. Emma stayed in the town she once thought she might leave behind. She stayed because she found something she didn't know she was missing, a place in someone's heart. Wyatt continued his peaceful ranch life. But now, with Emma by his side, his days brighter, and his nights less lonely. And whenever the stars shone brightly across the sky, Emma remembered the soft words she whispered to him that night. The words that had opened the door to a new chapter in both their lives. It wasn't magic. It wasn't sudden. It was real. And sometimes, real is more beautiful than anything else.